basically, specifications grading is a non-traditional grading system that is based on pass or no pass. The idea is that every assessment, a student will receive a pass or no pass. And that is based on a list of specific requirements or specifications that they must achieve. To get a pass, they must achieve all of them. If they don't achieve all of them, it's a no pass. And the nice thing about this system is it can incorporate this feedback loop. I first became introduced to non-traditional grading systems from this blog, gradingforgrowth.com. Fascinating. I highly recommend it if you're looking for some weekend reading. Because who wouldn't want to read about assessment on the weekend, right? Yeah. They introduced this framework. They're eventually going to come out with a book. They're going the blog to book route. But they introduced this idea that in assessment, there must be clearly defined standards, which I've discussed in a presentation last year if you attended, or at other campuses if you've seen me there. Helpful feedback. Marks indicate progress. And the key, reattempts without penalty. And it's this last part that I think adds a degree of fairness to EMI. But before you dismiss this, because you may want to dismiss this outright, let me explain the system more in depth about what I do. Okay. So I'm not going to talk too much about this because I've done it in other presentations. If you're interested in knowing about how to write objectives or outcomes, feel free to email me. But basically, if you look at my syllabi, every class, every week, has a listed outcome. I prepare these before the semester even starts, and my students get it right at the beginning. And I say, this is what you're going to be assessed on. You can either do it or you can't. I know midterm exams are coming up, and students come up to me, what's going to be on the midterm exam? I say, the outcomes. Be able to do the outcomes, and you'll be fine. I don't think you can do assessment in EMI without having clearly defined outcomes, or what they call standards. So if your course is not based on outcomes, I would highly recommend that you return to the beginning part of this cycle and establish those course learning outcomes. Because that's the first step to fair assessment in EMI. Also on my syllabus, specifications. My students at the beginning of the semester, for every assignment, get a list of exactly what I expect on an assessment. Now this helps me because I don't have to think about what kind of feedback I need to give my students. It's a yes or no. Did they do it or did they not? If they didn't, there's my feedback. Dear student, you didn't do this. That's why it's a no pass right now. There is complete clarity. There's no surprises. Now back to the language thing. Every assignment has student uses internationally intelligible English. So that ends up being a specification. Because if they don't, then I can address it. What I love about this is I don't have to stress about points. Because throughout my career, in a point system, do I take 1 point? Do I take 2 points? Oh, what did I do 20 papers late before? Oh, I want to be fair, but I forgot. I don't have to worry about it anymore. My TAs don't have to worry about it anymore. Yes or no. Pretty high inter-rater reliability. Now, some of you might be saying, well, this is similar to a rubric. Well, kind of. It's basically that top category of your rubric. But just like with scores, I've used rubrics. Oh, should it be a 3 or 2? It's like right on the line. Why didn't I design like a 0.5 on this rubric? What a waste of time. What a waste of my brain energy. Lots of things to do as an academic. That's not a good use of my brain power. So I think this is easier. Now, rubrics can be good. I'm not dogging on rubrics. Rubrics can be good if you are using them as a development tool. Right now, you're here. So next assignment, when you do this again, we need to push you to this level. But that's very rarely what we do in our assessments. That's stuff we do as teacher coaches. We go into the class, we say, you're here. Okay, I want you to work on this. Next time I come observe you, we're going to move you up to this level. Rubrics are great for development. I don't know if they're really great for assessment in the way that we use it in our course. So I like specifications. I'm going to skip to this part, reattempts without penalty. Because if there's one thing that you, as an instructor, may not like, it's this part. But this is the part that makes it fair. As I said, every assignment is scored as pass or no pass. Pass meaning they did all the specifications. No pass meaning they didn't. In my course, this is very important. I have a son. He is 10 months old now, going on 11 months. I found out that holidays are not as exciting when you have children. The people in my class could someday be his teacher. So I don't want any of my students leaving my class not being able to do things they need to be able to do, because I would be the worst parent to have. So if my students get a no pass on an assignment, I ask them to do a reattempt. Does that mean they have to do the entire assignment over? Nope. That would be a not good use of my time as an instructor. I would never get promoted. In fact, I would probably lose my job, because teaching is not the only thing I do here. I do this. It really depends. What that reattempt looks like depends on what they did wrong. So for example, if they just didn't demonstrate one small thing, I send them an email. I say, you didn't do this, send me an email back telling me how to do that. Like for example, if they created a document and they didn't talk about this point, I'll say, send me an email, talk about that point. Tell me what you know about it. Check my email, demonstrate it, okay, switch to a pass. Thank you. Sometimes it's a little more in-depth. Sometimes we have to have a meeting. When I've done these meetings, it really depends on the assignment. If it's lower order thinking, just like understanding, comprehension, emails are usually satisfactory. With the higher order thinking assignments where they have to do application and synthesis and all that stuff at the top of Bloom's, sometimes a meeting is necessary. In my experience, meetings take about 10 minutes, maybe 15. I do it in my office hours, which I think we may be accustomed to not using as instructors. In this system, I have to use my office hours. When I did this last semester on the final assignment, less than 10% of my students had to do a reattempt. So it took me maybe about an hour to do the reattempt with students, and that was it. Again, office hours. I just graded an assignment today, and I want to share. It was a group assignment, 13 groups. 6 groups passed. 4 groups are going to do reattempts through email, so that's pretty easy. 3 groups need to have a meeting with me. I share this with you because that's bad. I'm not blaming my students for that. I'm blaming myself for that one. So the time I have to spend on reattempts, well, that's my fault, because obviously if over 50% have to do a reattempt, I must have done a bad job. And that's part of assessment too. I'm sharing this with you to tell you that assessment isn't just about assessing the students in EMI. Sometimes it's about assessing yourself, and I failed. I failed. But that's okay. Because I'll do the reattempts, I'll take my punishment, my students will learn what they're supposed to learn, and they'll be great teachers. So does this system take more time? Yes. But does it adequately and quite well, if I may say, monitor progress, identify the sources of difficulties, and provide viable solutions? It does. I'm solving the problems because I don't want my students to fail my course. I want them to be great teachers. Now, I'm going to take a moment. Consider the context of my course. Everybody is an education major. They are top students. They care about this. Would I do this in an undergraduate general education course? Not a chance. I might have to do something else non-traditional, but I would not do this. My evaluations would be terrible. Who knows? They might still be. We'll see what my students do. But I think this is fair because if you're worried about students not being able to demonstrate understanding in your course, well, this is an opportunity to catch those students and see if they really do understand. And you can find any way. The reattempt does not have to be in the same format. I decide the format of the reattempt. Whatever I decide can help me understand that they understand, that's what I do. Last semester, they wrote papers. We had oral meetings for reattempts. I didn't make them write the paper again. We had a conversation about the content. And when I was convinced that they had understanding, I changed it to a pass and I moved on. So EMI does not have to be this all-sums game where if they don't understand how to write or do something, well, all is over. It doesn't have to be. For the sake of time, I'm only going to briefly talk about this, but you're probably wondering, okay, cool, pass, no pass. How do you give grades at the end of the semester? So my grading system is based on Bloom's taxonomy. Students have to do reflection exit tickets. And if you think about reflection exit tickets are probably at this knowledge comprehension level. They have to do it every class. If students do 80% or more of the exit tickets and they pass, that demonstrates that they have 80% or higher comprehension of my course. They get a C, they pass. They've demonstrated basic understanding of my course. To get a B, they have to show me application level. So depending on the course, that means different things. My midterm and final oral exams for this particular course ask them application questions. If your principal says this, what are you going to do? And they reply using the things they learned in the course. Pass both of those and the C-level work, you get a B. Because you can do higher level work with this material. And it goes up. I have an analysis assignment that gives them an A. I have a synthesis assignment that gives them an A+. If they pass all those assignments, they get an A+ in the course. If they don't pass all those assignments, we look at what they passed, and depending on what level they are, that's the grade they get. They don't want an A+, they don't have to have an A+. Because sometimes students have other things in their life that take priority. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a problem for my students, but it may be if I taught a different group. So this is the grading system I use. I think this is fairer than the score system, to be honest. Linda Nilsson talks about why it's fairer in her book. But just briefly, I make sure my students actually understand the entirety of my course. It isn't a mathematical game of how can I game this system. I was a student once. You don't think I looked at that syllabus? I was semi-intelligent. Oh, I studied that syllabus to see how can I most efficiently get the grade that I want. And some of you are laughing because you did it too. Can't game this system. You show me higher level thinking, you get a higher grade. Show me basic level thinking of the course material, you get a basic grade. I think this can be fairer. But it won't work for every class. May not work in your discipline, may not work with your specific students. But this is what I'm doing to try to address that fair issue. That thing that many of you said in the comments at the beginning. Is it fair? My non-traditional grading system that I've implemented is trying to address that issue. Now I do have this warning slide. I've already said this, but it's worth saying one more time. I don't think specifications grading will work for everyone. But I don't think the traditional one will either. So I recommend that you take a look at this short article from Grading for Growth. Maybe another non-traditional grading system works better for your class. I'm starting to think myself, specifications grading may not be the best for my practice and bilingual teaching course. I may need to change to, for example, a mastery-based testing system or assessment system. And I may play with that in the future. There are many ways that you can do assessment in your classes that are the non-traditional type. And I think EMI is going to require non-traditional thinking to be successful. Okay? So I'll give you a very non-academic definition, but one that's probably suitable for this group of scholars. What is formative assessment? It's student performance data. It's constantly collecting data to see how our students are learning and what we can do about it. When the data says something and things look bad, kind of like this, where over half my class failed, well, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to say, oh, well, oops? Or am I going to use my non-traditional system to fix the problem? This is what formative assessment is. You may have done formative assessments before you did EMI, but I'm going to make the argument that it is so much more important in EMI because there are so many things that could go wrong. Successful EMI is going to require, to use something we're all familiar with, constant data collection. We have to know where our students are so that we can help them be successful.